Has started. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2022 Open Budget Workshop for Daybreak. My name is Tony Lavina. I was the interim community executive director for Daybreak and was helping out the committee and board through the budget process. So I'll be doing the majority of the presentation today. Before we get started, we have a number of introductions. So I'm going to go around the horn and have the committee introduce themselves, and we'll start with Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Costa. I'm in Heights Park area.
Amanda?
Hi, I'm Amanda Morton, and I've been a resident for almost 6 years.
Okay. Ron?
Hi, I'm Ron Tucker. I've been a resident for 2.5 years in Springhouse Village.
And Will?
Hi, I've been a resident for about a year, close to a year now in the North Shore area.
And we have one committee member who's not with us. His name is Scott Sherman. He is on vacation this week. I think it's a school break, so he's out having fun with the kids. Also on the call, we have Cindy Spillane, your new executive director. So take it away, Cindy.
Well, hello, I'm glad to be here and glad to be back. So you're in good hands with this committee and Tony, and I look forward to meeting all of you in person someday soon.
Great. So I'll give you all the residents a quick overview of how the PowerPoint's going to flow, and then we'll just get into the PowerPoint. So today we're going to start with some budget headlines for 2022. We're going to provide an overview of the budget process because there were a lot of changes to the process this year. Highlights for 2022 as far as what's impacting the budget. We're going to provide a high-level overview of both the income and expenses for the association in 22. And then we're also going to look at accomplishments and what the future is bringing for the community. So with that, we'll kick off the PowerPoint. Oh, one reminder, and you might have seen this already down in the Q&A feature. I'd like you to hold your questions. We're going to do a Q&A session for about 15 to 20 minutes after the presentation. If we don't get to your question, we are going to track all the questions, and we will post the questions and responses in a few days after this workshop. So with that, I also want to mention that the clean and marked up summary versions of the budget are on the website, so you can take a look at those if you want to follow along. Not that I'm going to be following the budget because it's too long, but at least you can see the budget while we're doing the presentation. So with that, let's go to the first slide. Second slide, sorry. So the headlines this year are there will be no changes in assessments for the master or the benefited service areas for 22. And key things to know is that the water course phases 1 and 2 are planned to come online in August of 22. And we're projecting that the Cove House will come online in October of 22. And that's how we budgeted for the coming year. And then with that, next slide is we'll talk about the reconfigured budget. And we want to emphasize that there's a lot of infrastructure improvements planned by both the committee and the board for 22, both coming out of operating reserves and what a new thing called the project fund. So we'll talk about that a little bit down the line here. Let's see. Some of the infrastructure improvements we do want to mention that are currently happening include Willoughby Park, the park equipment rehab project. We're doing sidewalk repairs in the Garden Park Village, and we recently completed the first phase of tree replacements in the community, mostly along roadways and the lakes. And then our focus for next year will be improvements, especially in the older neighborhoods, and Founders Park is going to be an emphasis for improvements for the coming year. And we'll talk about that shortly. So go to the next slide. Wanted to give the residents an understanding of what we did. We took the committee and management took a really hard look at how the financial statements are presented and what's in the financial statements, and wanted to clean that up because we're getting to the point as a community where a clean set of financials that'll be consistent down the road will be a good thing to have for the residents to look at, and it won't be as confusing as probably has been in the past. Some of the issues we took a look at were inconsistency in how we coded similar operations, multiple geocodes for the same sort of service like office supplies or water, whatever. So we wanted some consistency in the geocodes. We also had many one-off geocodes that we got rid of in this budget. So what you're going to see in 2022 is a simplified geocoding process where we use the same code for each line item, differentiated by the cost center. So whether it's in the master association, if it's in a pool, if it's in the community center, they're all going to have the same geocode, but there'll be a separate code that indicates cost center. And that's going to cut down on miscoding of invoices. And then you have the GL entries that have to be corrected. And we're just trying to avoid a lot of that confusion in the process moving forward. We eliminated all the one-off options. One of the things you will see this coming year in 22 is that similar budgets have been corrected. So for instance, the community center budget was all lumped into one cost category. And what we did is we broke that down into like a G&A section, a contract section, a repairs and maintenance section, a utility section. So we had a cleaner understanding of where the expenses were going and why they were going there. So it's a little bit easier to track. The Ochre Lake budget in the past is one line item, and we're talking about a more than $500,000 budget. So we broke that down similarly, where you have a G&A section, a contract section, a repairs and maintenance, that type of thing. So it's very consistent moving forward. And then we also aligned similar budgets together. So for instance, the pools, there's 5, 6 pools. They all were structured differently. So in 22, they will all have the same structure and they'll all be tracked similarly. So we can have a better idea where the costs are going and moving forward with tracking those expenses. Ochre Lake and the water course, which is coming online, will have the same budget structure because they're very similar operations. And the same thing goes for the community center, the DCC, and the Cove House. They're both structured the same way moving forward, so we'll be aligned operationally for expenses. The other thing we're presenting in 22 is the actual reserve budget. We've always had a reserve budget, but this year we're actually showing what's in the reserve budget to the membership. It's showing the funding source, which is the reserve, the transfer to reserve account. And these expenses that are going to be shown on the budget track with what is in the current reserve study or the new reserve study that's going to be adopted here in a week or so. And we want to mention that there will be additional changes, including park funding to rehabilitate Silent Rain Park. We added that to the reserve funding. We just moved that up a little bit because we felt it needed to be improved. This year, we also created a project fund account. So the board and committee during the year identified this account to use funds for larger project needs in the community. We'll review those later in the presentation. But moving forward, each year, the Finance Committee, Budget and Finance Committee will be recommending additions or deletions. This committee will be researching the community and then recommending those needs to the Finance Committee. We'll then move that up to the board for approval for the project fund. Let's see. Next up, one of the issues we had is that the benefited service areas, you'll hear that term a lot, or also called BSAs, were incorporated into one single line item for expenses and one single line item for income, or two line items for income on the budget. And the benefited service areas are areas that receive additional services more than anyone else in the master association. These benefited service areas typically are like for townhomes. Sometimes it's snow removal in hammerheads, be the island village, be the lake village. So we've, because of the way this was accounted for in the past, we've had the management team go through and invoice by invoice and lot by lot, break out the income and the expenses for each of the benefited service areas. We'll be making journal entry adjustments at the end of this year to bring them forward. And then each of the benefited service areas are going to have their own budget for 22 and tracked individually for both income and expenses. And it'll be much more transparent to the membership on that situation. You'll see those budgets with the information already supplied. One of the key things for the benefited services areas is that they'll each have their own reserve account where reserve accounts are needed because some benefit service areas don't have reserves, but they will have their own bank account and that'll all be tracked separately within the financials. And then lastly, we are developing a 3-year rolling budget. We are working with developer Larry H. Miller Development and the committee and management to work together to understand what's coming to the association on a 3-year rolling basis so we can make strategic decisions in budgeting more appropriately than kind of reacting to it on an annual basis. So I think that's a great long-term and strategic goal for the committee and the board so we can better anticipate the needs, assessment needs for the community. And that 3-year plan will include both the operating budget, the reserve budget, and the project fund budget. So we'll take a look at those regularly. Next up, here are the highlights for 22. First of all, Larry H. Miller Development is anticipating reducing the rate of growth in the community. And so, and I just want to mention that these are the highlights that the board and committee want to convey to the membership because these all are important factors going into the 22 budget. So you probably know that in the past 2 years, we've added 1,800 to the community. That type of sales pace is not sustainable or healthy for the community. So the developer has planned to decrease sales to 480 units per year. And that is reflected in the 22 budget. And that's the plan for future years at the same time. We've also moved, like we said, the BSA budgets out of the master budget and into their own budgets. We have rebid insurance this year to the tune of a savings of nearly $60,000. That's reflected in the budget. And then also this year, we typically bid landscape maintenance on a 3-year cycle. In 22, that cycle starts again. We just completed and awarded all the contracts for landscape maintenance services for 22. The key point for the membership is to know that management recommended a change in how we do landscape management in the neighborhoods. Currently, we have 2 to 4 contractors in the same neighborhood, and the finger pointing is unbelievable. So what we have recommended, and that's how we're proceeding, is there's going to be a single landscape maintenance contractor in each neighborhood for single point of contact to solve issues. And I think moving forward, I think that's a good thing for the residents because as you call in or use the Acela app to report situations, we don't only have to go to one person and get the issue solved. So I think that's a good thing for the membership. Next up, slide-wise, we completed an update of the reserve study. This is our normal update. We did include Ochre Lake as well as a number of new common areas in the community. And we're really pleased to report that the reserve analyst has said that the association is in a well-funded position for as a result of the reserve study and our funding level for reserves. So a good thing to have and to know for the membership moving forward, we shouldn't have any hiccups as far as making changes or improvements to the community with the needs identified in the reserve study. And then we've also high priority for the committee and board, and we can't emphasize this enough, is they have significantly increased funding for landscape improvements, sidewalks, and park equipment. We believe we've kind of fallen behind in the infrastructure piece of the puzzle for Daybreak. We want to keep Daybreak the premier community it is, and we're going to invest in the future by spending money in 22 to make things happen. So for instance, in 22, you're going to see landscape improvements. We've added $200,000 annually for landscape maintenance extras. And what that means is that's going to address the regular maintenance issue needs for during the season for tree and shrub pruning, lawn fertilization, lawn aeration, that type of thing. We've also added $100,000 to the landscape repairs and replacement line item. That's going to be supplemented by $93,000 already identified for plant tree replacements in the reserve budget. We're adding a new line item totaling $180,000 for landscape parts and supplies, again to address the die-off of trees, shrubs, and landscaping issues we've had in the community. We've also added a new line item for sidewalk repairs that total $75,000 annually. That's supplemented by the $263,000 that's identified in the reserve study for sidewalk repairs. Now this applies both to the concrete sidewalks and the asphalt trails. We will be focusing in Founders Park because the oldest neighborhood is suffering the biggest problems with those issues at this point. We've also added a new line item for park equipment, $45,000. It's under the line item park repairs. And this supplements the $79,000 we've put in the reserve budget for park replacements. And the NAC will be recommending additional changes or needs in Founders Park that the committee will be considering and then recommending to the board for operational situations in 22. New item for this year is the project fund. So as mentioned earlier, the board and the committee work together to identify the major projects that need funding in the community. Some of them are carryover from the current year into 22. Those will be discussed more in detail down the road, but part of this includes the maintenance building and other the lake lighting situation. So we'll talk about that in another slide. And then finally, secondary water costs have become a big cost item for the community. In the scheme of things, it's not that big. I mean, we're talking about $750,000, but $500,000 of that is just in secondary water costs. And secondary water is the sole source for water for Ochre Lake. And it also supplies nearly 90% of the water, irrigation water for our common areas. And that cost is increasing. So what we're going to be doing is dedicating resources, personnel and staffing for the water company, because down the road, that cost will escalate and we'll want to have a say in how that cost is controlled. Okay. So next up is our first budget pie chart, and this is all on the income side. So you'll see the pie chart, the items in order of largeness, bigness, whatever you want to call it. Assessments, total 70% of our income budget. The telecommunity assessments, 22% of our budget. New item, well, it's actually carryover this year, but we've added it to show it to the membership. The construction loan for the new maintenance building is 9% of income. Reserves, our revenue share, and then minor issues for lake and water course income, center and pool co-house income. So you understand the bulk of our income if you take telecommunity out of the picture, 92% of all of our income comes from homeowner assessments. Overall, income increases 23% over 2021, but the assessment revenue increase is about 10%. And that's based on the 480 units plus all the absorption we've had in the past couple of years. The maintenance building does contribute a significant portion to that income side of about 9%. So, and then we've also increased funding for our reserves by 1% over 2021. So all in all, we feel we are in a very comfortable position assessment wise. That's why we're not increasing assessments for 2022, and we'll take a look at it next year again as costs change. Next budget slide will be the expense pie chart. You can see that contract services is clearly the largest piece of the puzzle for the community, 48%. Then staff services, repairs and maintenance, utilities, G&A, and then other smaller budget categories. So overall expenses for 2021 increased 22% over, overall expenses increased 22% over 2021. However, contract services overall decreases 3% from 2021. Staff services overall decreases 2% from 2021. Repairs and maintenance increased 7%, significant change for 2022. And then remaining categories basically remain static, although we did have a decrease in insurance because of the bid out process for that service. We'll talk about some of these line items here quickly. So as we mentioned, there were 1,800 homes absorbed in the last 2 years. This has put a strain on all operations, including just finding contractors, but contractor costs have escalated. Staffing, finding staff has been an issue. Materials, supplies have all become issues, and that's just been compounded by the COVID situation. And it has impacted our delivery of services. That's why so many projects lagged in 21 and not being completed. We're now going to focus on getting those projects done in 2022, and that, therefore the emphasis in money to those line items to get those addressed. The biggest change in contract services was in landscape maintenance as a result of the 3-year bid process and adding the landscape extras line item. That line item increased 30% or about $500,000 over 2021. But based on the change in the last 3 years and the absorption of common area and park area, as well as Ochre Lake and the benefited service areas, that has impacted that segment of the budget. Under staff services, we anticipate adding a project manager for the Master Association, but 25% of that person's time is going to be charged to the water company. And the point is that we need somebody to pay attention to what's happening in the water company. We'll talk about this in a bit, but eventually the Master Association will be the majority shareholder of water shares for secondary water. So we want to keep our eye on that and how that plays out down the road. In addition, we've got over $3 million worth of projects anticipated in 22, and we anticipate same levels of that type of project stuff moving forward. So therefore the need for the project manager. We've also are adding an admin coordinator for our front desk operations. We're currently averaging over 900 phone calls a week and 400 emails a day and more than 100 walk-ins a week, plus just the administrative services that go on in that front desk office area. So we're projecting to add an admin, and then we're also projecting to add a compliance coordinator to the staffing. We have 2 right now. Typically in a community of this scale, we would have 1 person for every 2,000 homes. We currently have 2 for 4,000, or 1 for 4,000 homes, which is pretty difficult to keep track of. And we do get a fair amount of feedback from residents that we're not doing enough to make sure the community is looking as good as it should. So this should help out in that regard. And again, we're well in the 400 to 500 letter range a week for violations. And then there's the follow-up, individual follow-up with every homeowner and trying to get those resolved. The great news is that we've got a great compliance rate in Daybreak. And I think that's the pride of ownership that we have in the community, and we hope to continue that moving forward. One note is that the staffing cost per unit peaked in 2020. We're now starting to see that cost per unit drop. We anticipate that that will continue. And part of the reason is that as we add the Cove House and we add the water course, we're going to piggyback on the existing staff structure to operate those areas instead of creating a whole new, I'll call it layer of staffing to serve those areas. So the DCC staff will help operate and maintain the Cove House. Same thing with the Ochre Lake staff. They'll help operate the water course. It won't be separate staffs. It won't be separate teams. They'll be integrated to the same service across the board. The next up is repairs and maintenance. We mentioned that you'll want to go back a slide if you can. Significant changes are the maintenance building construction. We're anticipating 1.2 to 1.4 million for the maintenance building. As we mentioned, we've added 100,000 to address landscape needs in landscape repairs and replacements, sidewalk repairs, and recreation equipment. Under utilities, our highlights are the secondary water costs. That has increased over 40% since 2021 or over 2021 as a result of the full water shares that go with the Ochre Lake operation, as well as the additional common area irrigation. So that's why we need somebody to watch. The key here is that as the community gets built out, the Daybreak water shares for secondary water will be almost exclusively held by the master association. So having a handle on that operation is going to be key for the future in controlling costs. And we do anticipate over time that those share costs should go down, but we want to make sure that that happens by having somebody bird dogging that operation. And under G&A, the biggest change was we added a professional fees line item. We've added a design review consultant to help with the processing of DRC applications, both on the landscape side and on the structure side. So that item was added. Under parts and supplies, the biggest line item was the addition of 180K for landscape replacements. And as we mentioned, insurance actually decreased by 60K from the prior year. Okay, next slide is the reserve budget. You can see the breakdown on the slide. We have trail improvements comprising 33% of the reserve expenditures for 22, the pool improvements 20%, and so on down the line. We plan on spending about 735,000 out of the reserve fund for these improvements. The bulk on trail improvements, as mentioned, goes to trail and sidewalk improvements. And then on the pool, the East Lake pool is up for major rehabilitation, including the pool itself, pumping systems, that type of thing. So you'll see quite a bit of work before the pool season in 22 at East Lake Park or East Lake Pool. Next up is the project fund. The project fund, next slide, please. This identifies the 4 major projects identified by board and committee for 22. So lake lighting is a carryover from 21. We're finally getting our hands around the scale of that need. The maintenance building also is a carryover. The location of, let me back up. Lake lighting. So this is lake lighting around all of Ochre Lake. The neighborhood advisory committee has already walked the lake and is making recommendations where lighting needs to occur or be improved or replaced. Those will be coming to the committee, finance committee soon, and then that'll get to the board for approval. On the maintenance building, the developer donated a piece of property to the association behind the Fry's Marketplace and also behind all those new warehouses along the Mountain View corridor. We are currently in design stage for that building, and that will house both all of the master association's operations as well as the council's operations and boats and that type of thing. Currently, we're scattered all over the place for storage of those items, and this will be centrally located moving forward. And then next item is the Millerton Basin. This has been an ongoing problem with drainage issues. We are in the process of taking a look at that. This 342,000 is a preliminary estimate, but in talking with the developer, we may be able to find some cost savings in fixing that up. And then we did add the BMX park as a quick rehab. There isn't much to do there, but we did want to add that to the project fund. So that comprises the project fund. Next up is the benefited service areas. So many of you may not know that these benefited service areas are scattered throughout the community. We identify them by letter and number. So SAO1, service area number 1 is Heights Park by Sago, which is a townhome project in Heights Park. Chocolate Homes is on the west side. Heights Park by Homes, located adjacent to the Sago townhomes. Marina Village is the new project on the lake shore, West Lake Shore, near Garden Park and across from the old Kennecott headquarters. Imagination Collection is a townhome collection on the west side. Island Village is all of the Island Village and their amenities. We have been doing snow removal on hammerheads and other small alleyways throughout the community. And then the Lake Village for their amenity, the Beach Club, I believe it's called Beach Club, that operation. All of these areas pay additional assessments for that benefit. And we have hired what we call a BSA manager that is funded by those benefited areas to service them. It's sort of like a sub-association, but without the governance structure of a sub-association. The master association owns and manages common areas, and then the homeowners benefiting from that service pay the additional assessment in those areas. Next slide up is rate of growth, and this is simply a map of the community. We just wanted to mention or reiterate that the declarant is anticipating a return to more normal growth pattern for the community. So we're budgeting 480 units in fiscal year 2022. And then next up is recent growth. In 21, we've added 13 acres of common area, and we're anticipating adding 22 acres of common area in 22. In 21, you can see pictures. We did rehab of the fire pits in the community. They're now gas fired. First phases of the spoke on the west side have been completed, are in the process of being turned over to the association. And then Gambit Park, which is near the new model home complex on the west side, recently dedicated to the association. Okay. Next up, just a quick mention. So you can see pictures here of the Cove House on the left and at the bottom on the right, as well as a portion of the water course. So committee and board take our growth very seriously. So that's why we've created the 3-year rolling plan moving forward. That'll just create some consistency in how we budget and why we budget moving forward. And we know that that's an important factor in keeping our assessments steady, not increasing significantly. So we're quite aware of the need to watch future growth and be part of the planning process. And then next up, if you can, next slide, we wanted to show you a quick video of what the watercourse and Cove House will look like. You may have seen this in the past. We want to remind you that there's no audio on this video. Go ahead and start it. And it's about a 2-minute video, but it gives you a quick overview of what the new areas are going to look like as they come online in 2022. And although the water course looks a lot smaller, it's still a very involved operational situation with the secondary water and having access for the residents, both kayaks and paddle boards and hopefully the Duffy boat, that type of thing. And you'll note that they're indicating private docks and that type of thing. Another benefited service area will be the watercourse village. They'll be paying a separate assessment for their access to portions of the watercourse down the road. And then you get pictures of the Cove House. These are conceptual at this point. We don't have final plans for the Cove House. And there you go. Beautiful addition to the community. Everyone's looking forward to seeing that completed, and I'm sure everyone will enjoy it once it's open. Next slide. So this is just a picture of the income side of the budget. This is what I would call the clean version of the budget. You don't see any strikes on names and numbers. Again, these summary budgets are now on the website for you all to take a look at, and you can comment on down the road. These are drafts budgets. The board of directors will be reviewing and approving the budget at their upcoming open meeting on November 3rd. So we encourage residents to provide questions, comments prior to that meeting. And if you have anything today, we'll try to answer them. And if we can't, we will write those questions down and get the answers to you shortly thereafter. So with that, it's time for resident questions. So we're going to take about 15 to 20 minutes and answer what we can. And I believe Sydney and Carrie will be giving us questions. So here we go.
Okay, so the first question that we have is, what is telecommunity?
Telecommunity is the CenturyLink assessments. $33 a month you pay for internet.
Perfect. And the next question we have is, have you calculated the water cost savings if misadjusted and broken sprinklers are adjusted and repaired quickly? Isn't that worth investing in?
Yes, and so part of the reason we launched the Acela app is to more quickly address issues because we can't be everywhere as they happen. So the sooner we hear about them, we send the landscape crew for that area out to fix as quickly as possible. We can't calculate the actual water loss because we don't know when and how long the water loss would be, but the quicker we hear about them, the quicker we can repair them and effectuate some cost savings.
Tony, if I can just jump in here, this is Ron.
You bet.
I don't know if everybody knows what the Acela app is. Maybe you could explain that a little more and how it works.
Sure. So we recently launched what's called the Daybreak app. You can go online, both Android, Apple, you name the phone system, and it's an app that you can use to report issues or concerns. There's drop-down menus for landscaping, sub-associations, patrol, all kinds of ideas or concerns. And you will geotag actually where the issue is. For instance, a sprinkler break, using your phone, it'll identify where that break is, and then we can send somebody out to respond. Once you send something in, that gets routed internally with our team, as well as any contractors who would be doing the work. And then you'll get an email back that we've heard the issue, and we're responding to the issue, and we'll also let you know when the issue is resolved. And if another person sees that same issue and reports it, we'll let you know we've already gotten that report, and we'll respond back when that issue is fixed. So we encourage all residents to take advantage of that. It's a great communication tool. And again, it's going to provide quicker service and cost savings for the community.
And just to clarify some things with that, it's called the Daybreak Direct app, and it is available in the App Store. However, it's still not available in the Google Play Store, and we are working on that. So it will be available in the Google Play Store soon. So
Good. Okay.
Another question is, when will the library open?
Great question. Don't know the answer, but we'll find out, and we'll add that to the Q&A.
And the next question is, where are the reserve funds housed?
The reserve funds are in separate bank accounts. They are listed on the financial statements. And so you can see a breakdown of where those funds are and how they accrue interest. Now, of course, we have to be very careful with where we invest funds. We're not getting the best return on investments based on, current interest rates, but the committee takes a good look at that every month and tries to do its best in getting a better return on those reserve funds. But everything on a reserve account is in a separate bank account, and they are tracked on the financial statements.
Next question, what, if any, oversight does the Master Association have over sub-associations, specifically negligence by sub-associations in addressing fixing items, neglected landscape, etc.?
Well, that's a great question. So Cindy, do you want to help answer that one?
Yes, that's not a budget question.
That's not a question.
But just like with individual homeowners, they have to follow the same guidelines. However, it's not the individual homeowner's responsibility to maintain their yard, say in a townhome, as part of it. So we get in touch with the property management company and try to figure out what's going on, make sure that they're aware of it, and to see what their plans are to fix it and get it all addressed. They also more than likely are hearing from their residents as well. So we do the same thing with them that we do with homeowners, only we have to go through a third party.
Feel free to keep typing questions in the chat. Those are all of the questions that we have in there right now, but we'll give homeowners a few minutes to type any further questions that they have.
And committee members, do you have any further input or thoughts on the budget for 22? No.
And Tony, I would just like to add, oh, sorry, Ron, go ahead.
I'll just like to emphasize that the committee has been very, very, I think, diligent and spent many hours talking about the growth of the community, especially of the water course and all the associated things associated with that. And I think we've really done, with the board's approval, a really good job of setting aside funds that are going to handle the extra costs associated with that and maintaining the stability and the improvements throughout the community while that extra water course comes into play. It's a big issue, not really an issue, it's a big addition to the community, and I think we're well planned for it.
So another question that came through is there money for tree replacement?
Yes. So we've added 180,000 plus 100,000 plus I want to say 93. I forget the number in the reserve study. I mean, we have more than tripled the amount of dollars dedicated to plant and tree replacement for 22 because we know we have a significant issue, and we want committee and board, like I said, emphasize the need to get that addressed.
Another question we have is, why is there such a large change in the budget for the benefited assessment areas?
So in 21 and 20 and prior years, those line items were just all lumped together in one line item in the budget, both on the income side and the expense side. So what we wanted to do is be transparent about what that was. And that's why we broke out each service area into their own budget. And if they have a reserve study, their own reserve study, but also reserve account to be, transparent to those people who are paying for those service area assessments, but also so it's not part of the master cost and income side. So it is a significant expense. We're pushing almost 500 units that are in benefited service areas already, and we project obviously quite a few more in the coming years. So better to have it segregated out than all lumped together at this point.
Is there any plans or budget to finish landscaping around the lake by Garden Park?
So complicated question, because part of that is being done by the declarant. There are both water line issues and irrigation issues that they are dealing with at the moment. And but at this point, the association hasn't really taken over those areas until the declarant developer has completed their portions of the work. We're anticipating that would happen in the spring because it's a little late to be planting at this point, but the infrastructure piece of the puzzle is being dealt with at this point. And then once it's completed and inspected, then it'll get turned over to the association. So it is something that is currently being worked on. I know a lot of people are frustrated by the delay, but there is, we can see light at the end of the tunnel here by springtime, summertime next year.
Are there any plans to add additional pools with the rapid growth in Daybreak? The pools were packed this summer, and has there been a focused look at an adults only facility outside of the 55 plus area? And if so, is there a timeline for these new pools and structures?
So that's actually a declarant question. We don't, as an association, plan to add any additional pools. I do know that the adult pool issue has come up before, and there are federal fair housing issues with having a pool in a master plan community restricting children. And so we have been looking at that issue because that has come up in prior meetings. And the reason age qualified communities can do that is because they are restricted, but they still have to allow children access to their pools. But as a master association, we wouldn't be able to restrict.
And the next question is, why do we need to replace the trees? And how can we work on preventing that cost? Why is that a cost that we have to deal with?
So part of, I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in, guys. But the management team is looking at why particular trees are not doing well in the community. And to be honest, there are going to be replacement of trees with other kinds of trees in the future that are more drought tolerant and more weather tolerant to our microclimate here in the Salt Lake Valley. But there are going to be instances where we can't or won't replace trees. We may do shrubs, but the reality is we're taking a hard look at what kinds of trees shouldn't be planted here anymore and what could be replaced. In fact, part of our consultant costs under professional fees for 22 is the use of an arborist to take a look at the trees and help us plan for the future.
Where are the details for the repair of the Millerton ponds located?
We don't have final plans yet because this was an addition to the project fund during this budget cycle. We have done preliminary estimates, but we need to do more detailed studies, and we're waiting on an agreement between declarant, city, and association on taking that over. Once that gets completed, then we can go full bore engineering plans. But we do have the original plans, of course, and or at least the declarant has those, but we at this point as a community don't have those, and we're waiting to get those part of this agreement.
Someone asked about accurate maps, which I can just answer real quick. All of the maps for Daybreak are on my or on the community website. So mydaybreak.com, that's where you can find the most accurate maps and things like that, including the budget. Someone also asked, where is the budget on the website? So it is under finances. Another question is, are there any plans to add community gardens to newer villages?
That would, again, would be a declarant question. The association itself at this point doesn't have plans to add gardens, but it's not out of the question. But in the newer neighborhoods, that would be a developer decision.
Another question, where can I get a copy of the draft budget and when will the final budget be approved?
So draft budget is currently on the website, both the clean version and the marked up version. We anticipate the board to approve the budget at I think it was the November 3rd open board meeting. And at that point, once it's adopted, then we would post the final budget on the website. And it will also be distributed after that to the membership.
We have shared all of the budget related questions that have been submitted so far.
Great. Well, again, committee, any other input? Questions? No? I want to thank all of you guys, committee members, for your diligent work. It's been an interesting budget cycle this year to go through all the changes that we talked about, but I think we've got a good budget both for 22 and moving forward for the future. And I look forward to seeing how that plays out down the road. With that, we'll call the meeting, the workshop closed. Please look for the questions and answers to be posted after this meeting in the next couple days, and enjoy your evening. Thank you.